Hello and welcome to Diminishing Returns. My name is Alan, and with me as always is Sol.
Hello.
Who is a little bit ill today. And
got a cold.
He's not 100%, but I'm sure, being the professional broadcaster he is, he will bring it. Yep, there it is. Okay, and joining us today, a new guest host, is Chris Hammond.
Hello.
Hello there.
Thanks for joining us, Chris.
I was half expecting to hear the music at the beginning. I'm a bit sad. I feel like I've seen behind the curtain.
Yes.
This is we've had a few of these lately where it's like a crossover episode of the show with another podcast almost.
Yeah, if that's what you want to call it.
I'm giving you a chance to plug your show. I'd normally be more on it, but I'm ill. So I'm just everything's very half-assed for me today, I'm afraid. A little bit like Justice League. Right?
Yeah, so I host another podcast called the Spoilt Milk Podcast. Me, a lady called Catty, if you want to call her that. She's utterly foul-mouthed. And then just a hobo that we found off the street. And we talk about shit films.
Excellent.
Oh.
And that can be found in all the usual places, I imagine.
Yeah, I never know what to say with the plug-in. It's just like, go find it.
Yeah, Spoilt Milk.
Google it.
Yeah.
You lazy shits.
Okay, so, guys, today we're looking at Justice League. So perhaps Chris...
This is another thing we've done a lot of lately is returning to films that we've already covered in a review of the year episode a while ago. Because now we've caught up with the 2-year period it takes to make a film, I think, basically.
So, Chris, why don't you give us a little introduction to yourself by telling us what you think of the DC universe prior to Justice League?
Oh, it's a tricky one, because I actually... Oh, Alexa just... It's a weird one, because I listened to your previous episode where you did Batman vs Superman and you did all the other Batman films.
No, Batman v Superman.
Oh,
Get
sorry.
it right. It's very
Dawn
important.
of Justice.
Yeah.
But I kind of forgot how much I liked the DC universe before they came and cocked it up.
Well, when you say you like the DC universe, do you mean the kind of broad franchise, like not this specific continuity, but, you know, Batman, Superman in general? Or do you mean Man of Steel, you were a fan?
Do you know, I didn't mind Man of Steel. And the weird part is, looking back now, loads of other people were quite happy with it. I know that Empire gave it 4 stars, and I quite liked it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember feeling like I was being more negative than most people when it came out. I think most people were kind of like, yeah, it was alright.
Anything with Costner in, I'm in. But even like the Tim Burton Batman films, really liked those. I know. I was quite surprised to hear, Alan, you said that you didn't really like Batman and Batman Returns.
Yeah.
I mean, is that a surprise? It's Alan. He hates everything.
I don't like anything.
Everything.
And yeah, and then the Nolan films, but yeah, some of the others are just absolute, like, dog shit.
Well, we prefaced the Justice League release by looking at Wonder Woman, which has been generally received as the best one in the series, and that certainly bears up my opinion.
In this continuity, yeah.
Yeah.
Sort of...
So what were your thoughts on Wonder Woman?
I liked Wonder Woman. I thought it was good. It's a low bar to be the best, but do you know, I liked David Thewlis in his little panties as well.
Oh, I always loved Thewlis.
When he was like, I'm just gonna lay around with my 6-pack and pants on.
I don't think I've ever seen David Thewlis in something where he wasn't my favourite thing about it.
Yeah. Like Dragonheart.
I've seen bits of that, weirdly, but never the whole thing.
But yeah, I thought Wonder Woman was decent. I quite liked the fish out of water approach. I liked that Gal Gadot, or however you pronounce her name, she had brought quite an innocence to the role, which I thought fit for that film, but she was still kind of doing it a little bit in this, and I thought that was poorly managed.
Like, come on.
Yeah. I wasn't a big fan of how they treated that 100-year passage of time.
No.
Well,
I think I complained about that when we covered this last time, actually, specifically with reference to Steve, who is treated like, she lost him a week ago.
Yeah.
But
we'll get into that. We'll go through it. But yeah, as you suggesting there, we have discussed this film before. We did it in our review of the year after it came out, whichever one it was.
Yeah.
I don't know which episode it was. But that means we talked about it for about 10 minutes. So today we're going to give it a proper, thorough going through.
Remind me how you felt about it, Alan, back then.
Yeah, kind of.
As good as Suicide Squad?
Before or after I watched it second time. No, I settled it as a kind of by the numbers, fairly standard, not great thing that actually a bit like, I'm not into superhero films really, so it's just a lot of nonsense to me. On the last review, when we first watched it, I gave it 6 out of 10. And we shall see if that changes by the end of this episode.
If it changes, it's going to go down from a 6. There's no way you're going to put it up.
Why do you think you don't like superhero films?
Well, I don't like fantasy in general. So the superhero stuff I like tends...
You're including sci-fi in that as well, right?
I prefer the sci-fi element stuff to the fantasy element stuff.
So you like Cyborg, but you don't like Wonder Woman?
No, not necessarily. But I don't like a giant monster guy coming down with his special club of magic and all that sort of nonsense. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not really into action films in general. I like character-driven stuff. Whenever I like stuff about a superhero film, it's because of the interesting character stuff they do with it. Which is why Wonder Woman was a bit more engaging. And I just get very bored with action scenes very quickly. So the quicker they get them done, the better.
Yeah.
And obviously Zack Snyder is the opposite of that, because he likes to put them all in slow motion and draw them out.
He loves it, doesn't he? He loves slow motion.
My other major problem with this universe building thing that like Marvel do, obviously, and DC, is that I don't remember anything after about 2 weeks of watching it. So I got no idea who people are or like the details of their backstory. So I lose a lot of it, I think. Like, just watching this again after we watched it, what was it, 6 months ago, whatever? A year ago,
maybe? Yeah, if that, I don't know.
When I watched this the first time, we'd recently watched Wonder Woman, and now when I watched it again, I couldn't really remember much about that. I couldn't remember if I was supposed to know anything about The Flash and Cyborg, or if they were new characters.
Nope, they're new.
Oh, good. Okay, so that explains why I couldn't remember anything about their backstory. It doesn't explain why they're not given much here. But
they're not entirely new. I think The Flash makes 3 seconds of screen time in the previous films, just kind of appearing in a vortex going "Wah!" and then disappearing again. But he's essentially a new introduction here.
And then is Jason Yo Mama he turns up on a video screen or something?
He's Maui, isn't it?
Yeah.
Alan, would you like this film a lot more if Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson was Aquaman?
Yes.
He's meant to be in the DC universe, or he was going to be in it. I don't know if he's still... Chris, you might know this. Yeah, he was cast as someone, wasn't he?
Black Adam, was it?
Yeah. I don't know much about the character, but...
No, I don't.
Black Adam?
He was officially cast as someone in the DC
Sounds like a very 21st
universe.
century name.
But I think... I don't know, because the DC universe is having such a shake-up now. I don't know if it's still going ahead or what.
Can we talk about the DC universe? Because, Sol, you always seem to know all the kind of background information. What the hell is going on with it?
I don't.
Have they officially booted out Zack Snyder yet?
Oh yeah. That was a while ago. I think. Well, I don't think they've officially. I think his daughter died. He went and took some personal time, and I think they kind of went, right, now's our chance, and sort of locked the door, and wouldn't let him back in. But I think he is officially gone from the DC universe now. Obviously, Joss Whedon infamously took over to finish completion of this film and handled a load of reshoots, which is part of why it's such a jumbled mess of tones and ideas. But yeah, I think moving forward, they don't really... they're kind of torn between wanting to wipe the slate clean and start again, and Wonder Woman being successful, and Aquaman already having been filmed. So, although word on the street is Aquaman's good. Yeah, initial reports from early screenings are saying it's good, so I can believe it. It's James Wan. He seems to know what he's doing. So
he did is it The Conjuring or Insidious, or he's got a horror background?
He did a load of horror things and Fast and the Furious films as well. So he's sort of flitted between big, massive action and horror.
Interesting.
So yeah, I mean, there were loads of films planned, but they just made a complete pig's ear of everything, trying to copy Marvel, moving too quickly, not taking the time to build things and try stuff out and get into a rhythm and a groove, and they just shat the bed really. But now it means we're in this really awkward place where they're putting loads of films into production that are not tied to this continuity at all, like this Joaquin Phoenix Joker film they're making, which they look like potentially quite interesting films, but I think general audiences are going to be so confused when they start dripping these things out. When we've got a Joaquin Phoenix Joker film coming out alongside a Jared Leto, what's her name, Margot Robbie spin-off, and a Margot Robbie Harley Quinn female Batman villain team up film. And
what about Shazam? Where does that fall into all this?
I think that's set in the same universe, but it's just an uncharacteristically playful-looking film. But I think that's the other thing, is they're kind of leaning hard on trying to make things more upbeat and happy, and because Wonder Woman was praised so much for being kind of optimistic and not being downbeat and dour like Zack Snyder is wont to do. And that, Joss Whedon certainly seemed to be hired to make Justice League a bit more fun and quippy and light. Yeah, Shazam's a weird one. Have you seen the trailer for that, Alan?
No.
I think there was talk of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson being Shazam at
I remember
one point
that.
as well.
I remember that talk. Who is it? Who's in it then?
Banana Man.
Well, as in the 1980s cartoon, or is it something else I'm not referencing? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the 1980s cartoon where a little kid eats a banana and then turns into this kind of Superman type figure. That was basically a spoof of Shazam, from what I can gather. Shazam is this kid says the word Shazam and then turns into a character called Captain Marvel, and there's a whole there's a whole load of obvious legal dispute over who owns the rights to Captain Marvel. Marvel are currently making their own Captain Marvel film that's nothing to do with it. So
Captain Marvel is not a Marvel character, you're telling me?
Well, there's a DC Captain Marvel and a Marvel Captain Marvel. They're two different characters.
Okay.
So yeah, but I don't think they use. Basically, Shazam was called Captain Marvel, but then there was a legal battle, and at some point they landed on, okay, you can use the name for the character, but all the titles of the stuff and marketing has to go by Shazam. So this is what I mean. Audiences are going to be very confused in the next few years. I think it's getting to that point.
I'm confused. I've got no idea.
What's Venom doing? He's not part of Spider-Man anymore, and what's going on? It's all a fucking state. Venom's crossing over with Jared Leto as Morbius the vampire. Jared Leto's playing a Joker, but it's not Joaquin Phoenix Joker. I think there's some other Joker project in the works. It's just a state.
There's another Spider-Man, isn't there?
Yeah, animated Spider-Man.
That looks quite good, actually. But
yeah.
So what was that film with Shaquille O'Neal in it? What was that?
Was that called Shazam as well?
Was that Shazam? That's what I'm thinking of when you say Shazam. No, wait. I've looked it up. It's Kazam.
Right.
With Shaquille O'Neal as Kazam. So who's in Shazam then? Who's playing the... I guess the child is an unknown child, but...
more or less, yeah.
He was in it. He played Eddie in it.
Oh, right. I didn't realise it was him. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. The guy playing the big superhero guy is Zachary Levi, if that means anything to you.
Zachary Levi? Why do I know that name? Is he the son of Gene Levy, who's in American
no.
American Pie? Hang on, let me look him up because I know that name.
Are you familiar with the weird comedy, drama-y, but comedy thing, Chuck?
I've heard, I haven't seen it, but
I don't think anyone actually watched it, but it ran for a while. He was Chuck. I think that's his biggest. I think that's his biggest claim to fame.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. Is he a big fella then? Or is Shazam more of a? Because he's not a big guy. He's not like a Dwayne The Rock Johnson, is he?
He's not like ridiculously muscular. I think he's the kind of guy you might cast as Superman rather than a muscly, obscenely muscly guy. I don't know. He looks quite big in these pictures, but he's stood next to a child, so it's hard to gather if that's just.
Well, sorry if this is a bit on a tangent, but talking of casting Superman, hasn't Henry Cavill quit now?
Yeah. He's left the DC universe. I don't know if he was quit or he was kind of ousted or what, but
everyone just forgot he was there.
Yeah,
and there's been quite a mixed reaction to that. A lot of people were sort of like, "Who fucking cares? He's the most forgettable, boring man in the world."
And everyone else was like, "Yes, he's gone."
I think I came to his defense online when someone was complaining about him, and I realised I was thinking of Armie Hammer, and I backed down. So there you go. But no, to be fair to him, he played a good Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also to be fair to him, Superman's a shit character.
Yeah.
And we all know this.
Well,
yeah.
I'm not sure. No, yes. I don't know. Superman stories have the potential to be incredibly interesting, and whilst I'm not sure that Superman himself is particularly interesting, I think he existing and the stories you can tell with him kind of justify that. And you couldn't tell the same stories if he wasn't the kind of boring character that he is. So it's hard to say. I get where you're coming from. And I certainly wouldn't want an interesting, like a character study about Superman. But Superman's very good for exploring the implications of, ethical conundrums on the world around him. Mm-hmm. You can get quite deep and intelligent with him, really. The films don't tend to do that.
Yeah, because do they ever do that?
They haven't yet, but there's the potential there.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, Henry Cavill certainly embodied everything about the guy so far. I think he did a very good job playing the role. It's just that these haven't been the best run of films for him to be in.
Has he done anything else that I've seen?
Well, he's in the new Mission Impossible, isn't he?
Yeah, because he had his moustache that caused problems on this film. He was in that Man from U.N.C.L.E. thing, I think.
With Armie Hammer. Who do you think, would you say that Christopher Reeve is the best Superman to ever go on screen?
I think I always think the original Superman films are shit as well as the old ones, the newer ones. So I don't really care. My favourite would be Dean Cain because that's the one I grew up with.
Yes,
in The Adventures of Lois and Superman. Or
Dean Cain.
But that's what I think of as Superman.
I quite like the original Superman films, but I honestly, if I was to pick my favourite, like Superman is the actor to portray him, it might be Henry Cavill. Honestly. Nice. I don't know, I'd have to watch them all again. I mean, he is such a kind of bland character that it is very much like a mannequin could do it.
It's a tough role, to be fair. It's a tough one to take on. Is Henry Cavill bland enough to play James Bond? He's got to be there, 2 years from now.
I mean, he's on all those
of course he is, because
lists, short lists, but I think he's a bit too obvious and boring, and so I don't think.
But if you're coming off Daniel Craig, you need to go to something else, as in not a buff guy, but like someone who looks good in a tuxedo, like your Pierce Brosnan type of Bond.
Do you have the option to message Calvin and see?
I think he gets very angry when people say Henry Cavill should be Bond. I think he gets like, "Oh, he's too old already, for fuck's sake."
It's too old. How old is he?
I don't know. I know he doesn't like it if you suggest Tom Hiddleston. He doesn't like it if you suggest Idris Elba. And I think Henry Cavill falls into that as well.
Right.
But yeah, I'll defend Henry Cavill to a point. And I think he's very good in this film, actually, given what he had to work with.
Oh, he barely does anything.
I think he brings enough of that kind of twinkle in the eye charm to Superman in the bits that were clearly done by Joss Whedon where his lips all fucked up. And even though he looks like a rat boy genius, he's I don't know, he's got enough of that kind of Superman, I'm a real American hero kind of charm to him.
I could not believe how much of the film he had that weird top lip. I was expecting it to be a couple of scenes.
Yeah, it was. I mean, there were extensive reshoots Joss Whedon did, which was like reported as like 20% or something of the film, which is still not a majority. But honestly, like watching the film, I think almost every scene is Joss Whedon. It really feels.
It comes a point where it's easier just to digitally put on a mustache to the bits that weren't him.
Yeah.
And just say that, oh yeah, when we revived him, he had a mustache. We don't know why.
Yeah, he's been because he wasn't fully dead, so he's been growing hair the whole time.
Well, doesn't your hair still keep growing when you die anyway? So they had their excuse.
Yeah.
But he's got a really big pubic bush. It just bulges in his suit.
Oh, God. But yeah, it's weird. Like I started rewatching this film yesterday. I started trying to pinpoint which scenes were Joss Whedon and which ones were Zack Snyder, and I got 4 or 5 scenes into the film and got bored and stopped making notes. But I mean, people made a big thing about how I read a lot of things saying it was very seamless. How they kind of had 2 directors stuff in there, 2 writers stuff in there. And I don't think it is at all. I think it's really obvious when Zack Snyder's done it, when Joss Whedon's done it. It's all the character moments and little quippy moments are so blatantly Joss Whedon scenes. There's loads of Superman that's clearly Joss Whedon because he's trying to make the character work and like rescue it, like the phone footage at the start of Superman. You know,
what was the point? Yeah. What was the point of that? By the way, what was the point of just sticking that in?
I think number one, it reminds you that Superman's in the film because you're not going to have any mention of him for an hour. Number 2, it reminds you that Superman was a kind of, or should be, a sort of pillar of hope and kind of tying back into that. I mean, I think that's largely it, those 2 things, but it also kind of recontextualizes.
Why does it end on a cliffhanger?
What, the phone thing? Oh, because he's going to go fight. I think it's a reference to one of the earlier films, but I can't remember what scene it's meant to be.
It's so heavily cut, this film. It just seemed like an odd choice to keep that in. If you're going to trim something, that was a really odd scene to keep in.
I think that was something they went, like, that feels like one of the last minute additions where they were like, this isn't working without this. We need to go and add that in.
I think you're probably exactly right. It is just like, oh, shit, everyone's going to, like, we're just dropping Superman in this an hour in. Let's just remind everyone that he's a thing.
Yeah, and like I say, it recontextualizes him because we've only seen him in these grim, dour Zack Snyder films where he's punching the shit out of Bruce Wayne and having a big fight and whining, and it kind of it recontextualizes him as Superman as he's more conventionally portrayed in the comics, which, you know, is quite upbeat and happy and friendly, and I think there's something to be said for that as well. It also sets a tone for the film because you can see how fucked his upper lip looks, and you're like, oh, this is going to be a mess of a film, isn't it?
This you just reminded me there, actually, that, you know, the whole preface of this film is, you know, Superman's dead and the whole world's gone to shit because of it. A man angrily kicks over some fruit in slow motion. That's how bad the world has got.
Well, that's so obviously, that's the most blatantly Zack Snyder taking over for that bit, because everything's in slow motion all of a sudden. You know what? If there's one thing Zack Snyder does well, it's the opening credits to a film.
Yeah, those montages.
Where it's just slow motion montage with a nice song, well chosen.
Well, it's because he's a music video director.
Who's got, and he's always managed to pull that off in all of his films, really.
I could not remember all what happened, and Superman had died. I don't know how he died. Batman was involved somehow.
He charged at a monster and accidentally got stabbed or something. It didn't make much sense.
So how was it Batman's fault? How was it Bruce's fault?
It wasn't.
Why does he feel so guilty about it and then all that then?
Bad writing.
He started on him.
Yeah.
I remember from the other film that Batman suddenly decided Superman had to die. for no reason, and that was the plot of the film. But I can't remember anything else about it.
I think he just feels bad about trying to kill him before he died, and it's not written very well.
Okay.
But they set up the end of the last one. They have that post. Is it a post-credit sequence where you see the grave of?
I don't think
Superman
it's even post-credit. I think it's like right the final shot before the credits roll of like the
dust or the gravel, and then they just completely ignore that.
Yeah.
But he's giving off
no
some
mention
sort of
of
energy.
it.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah. If you're going to bring him back, there you go. You've written in and out, and then they just ignore it and throw a cube at him.
Yeah. Tell you what, though, there are a handful of action scenes in this film that I think are very good.
Oh, yeah?
One of which is when the iconic rock band, Canadian-American rock band from the late 60s, early 70s, attacks Wonder Woman Island and goes to steal a cube.
Yeah.
And they're like, born to be wild? I don't think so. And run away with a box. And he's like, that's done very well for the most part. Yeah. I mean, again, the editing is schizophrenic. It really feels like a mess. There's shots where it's like, hang on, did they just die? That character just disappeared from that shot to the next. I don't know quite what's happened there, but for the most part, I think that's a nice, tense, kinetic scene. It works well.
I remember in that thing, I was like, this has to be fake. Like the way the camera's moving around a running horse. It's like, I know some of this is fake, but it's done really well. I can't figure out what is fake. So I have to give it credit for that. Because I was thinking, I hate when they do all these unrealistic camera movements because it just reveals how fake it is. But then I'm like, oh well, they've done it. They've done it well. Yeah. If you can do it that realistically, then sod it. I guess that's the future, isn't it?
And the other one is when they revive Superman. And he's like zombie Superman, and he has a fight with him. I think that's a pretty good action scene.
I was really hoping we'd get a proper zombie Superman. That is such
you
could do a whole film around that where he's just like brains, and then like ripping people apart and stuff. And
I know it's a missed opportunity
because they boil that whole. You could do a whole film. They boil it down to about 5 minutes where they have a fight, and then Superman's only weakness, love, and that's that.
It's such
move on.
Yeah. But I do love that moment when the Flash is running past him and then he slowly turns his head and you're like, oh shit, he can move as quickly as he can. He's like genuinely menacing as well. I think it's done quite well.
I think that's Ezra Miller that sells that because his oh shit, this is something I've never seen before.
Yeah,
he's hands down the best thing in this film, I would say, Ezra Miller. I've heard a lot of sniffy things about him where people are like he's not playing the role right. I don't really know the
well, I have no context of the comic book character, so I don't care about that.
He's fairly in line with the Flash that I've seen before, which isn't a massive amount of portrayals of him, but they're large. I mean, this guy's maybe slightly younger and more naive than the Flash as I've seen him before, but I think that's fine. It's a young Flash.
I did like him. The kind of the whole socially awkward genius thing is a little bit overdone.
Yeah,
but he does it well. They didn't overplay it. I think when he does a film on his own, that's going to be a more delicate balance to tread. Being the kind of comic relief character in an ensemble film is a bit easier.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But I think there's a lot of personality there that you can work with. So high hopes.
But it was almost like they didn't know who they wanted to do the heavy lifting of the story. Some of it was Bruce Wayne, and then they were kind of almost trying to shoehorn it into Wonder Woman, and then Clark Kent came back, and then it was his film for a bit.
I think Wonder Woman, my guess is Wonder Woman was a big hit, so they were like, Joss, can you add some more Wonder Woman, please? And he was like, I guess so, yeah.
I imagine that as well. So, do you want to go through the film and then we'll kind of...
I started making notes, but I gave up pretty quickly because I saw the film fairly recently and I just sort of started letting it wash over me.
We established basically early on, first scene with Batman, that there's some sort of evil robot man-moth creature that is attacking everyone.
Yeah.
A man-moth?
Yes, that's exactly what I said. Which I get. We've got no previous context for that, have we? It's just like, oh look, there's this thing. We're going to find out what it is.
There's a bizarre dream sequence in Batman v Superman where you see some weird man-moth type things buzzing around. Is there? Yeah, it's very brief and it doesn't make any sense within the context of the film. I think it's meant to be... I think it was meant to set stuff up that never really quite happened, and ultimately it's been repurposed as Batman having a sort of vision of things to come. But it plays very weird. It's like this weird zombie alien on wings that he's got to deal with.
This is one of the big problems with this film, and I don't want to always compare DC to Marvel, but Batman is basically the equivalent of Hawkeye. And in Marvel, they're like, well, get him on the top of a building, shooting arrows with Aaron Taylor-Johnson in his shit accent. But in this one, they want Batman to be the leader, but he's clearly inferior to the others. You've got Superman, who's a god, and Wonder Woman, who's a god. And then Batman's leading it with his little, like, penknife, being like, I'm gonna...
But the problem with it is... he's not got great leadership skills. That's the problem. If he was just a really great leader, it could work. It's like
that is exactly
saying Alfred has no skills, but his job, he does it really well.
That is exactly it. In good versions of Justice League, it works because Batman is a good leader and he's intelligent, and you can buy that he is, good at bringing ideas to the table and plans. And whereas here, he comes across like an idiot. And one that kind of would wind you up to be around. We
got Batman as a sort of ineffectual leader, to the point where part of the plot is him getting Wonder Woman to take over.
Yeah.
Because he can't be bothered. He's like, look, let me pay for everything. I'm happy to do that. Just as long as I can join in and have a fight with you sometimes. Is there some indication of trying to set up a potential romance between Bruce Wayne and Princess
Diana? Yes.
Yeah. And they didn't really lay it on thick, but it felt like they were laying ground for something later on.
Lady Di, Batman, they've always been a bit of a will they, won't they, is my understanding. They've always been a bit of a Ross and
That's
Rachel.
Probably the best way to play it.
Sam
actually.
and Diane.
Let it, rather than...
They definitely have done stories in various forms where they've, got together and stuff, but I think they normally just kind of have a very... slightly flirty relationship, and then there's usually a love triangle situation that ends up developing because Bruce will go off with Reporter or someone, or Catwoman, yeah.
He's just no Steve Trevor, is he?
Yeah. And I think Wonder Woman often goes off with someone else. It's like, it's a weird thing, but they definitely do have quite a history of, Speaking of which, I've come to realise I have a bizarre fetish for Wonder Woman's outfit as it appears in these films.
Okay. Does it have to have a Wonder Woman in it, or are you alright with just the outfit?
Well, it's weird, because initially I was like, is Gal Gadot really, phenomenally attractive? And obviously she's, supermodel standards, standard. But... she doesn't really do anything for me unless she's in that very specific outfit. And I realise it's not her, it's the outfit. And it's a very specific... it's not any Wonder Woman outfit. It's specifically the kind of Thor, fantasy, Lord of the Rings style Wonder Woman outfit that we get in these films. And I think it's specifically the Wonder Woman outfit, because all the other Amazonians weren't doing it for me. I was really paying attention. So I don't know quite what it is, but there's some very specific combination of things there that I find very attractive.
She was definitely more sexualized in this film. The amount of ass shots was quite ridiculous. What about Thirsty Lois? Was that a BJ joke? Where Diane Lane was like, I've heard you're the thirstiest young woman. Hungry.
Yeah, that's what they say around here.
Was that really what they were going for? Because I had to rewind it.
I thought exactly the same thing, because if they weren't going for that, then it doesn't work as a bit of dialogue. It doesn't mean it's a pointless thing to say. Unless she just said the wrong word in the tape, and they just went with it. But we right at the beginning of the film, after we've established Batman and the Man-Moths, we establish Wonder Woman again in a totally non-contextual scene just to show what she does.
Yeah, in the one scene I can't quite figure out which bits were Joss Whedon and which bits were Zack Snyder.
Well, the slow motion bits were probably...
Well, I don't know. I almost suspect in this instance that what we're getting is Joss Whedon attempting to do something in the style of Zack Snyder, and that's why it isn't actually a very good action scene, and it doesn't really work. Because there's lots of slow motion, but it's not, like, good. And if there's one thing Zack Snyder can do, it's slow motion, so...
It's a very small scene. It's like you've got a guy with a briefcase bomb and then like a dozen or so people up against a wall that are hostages. But you only ever see like a shot of them at a time. Feels like they were shooting in a room where they only had like a 4-foot section of wall to shoot against. And that was all they had to work with.
That shot of Wonder Woman stood atop Lady Liberty as well. That is pure Joss Whedon writing. That like regardless of the rest of it, that has to be a Joss Whedon moment, surely.
Can I ask actually about Wonder Woman? Like what her skills are? Is it established? Because here she has like she's super speed. I know she's got the bracelets of bullet deflection.
She's super strong. I think she's very fast, but not like the Flash levels of fast.
Can she fly or just jump?
I think she can just jump.
Yeah.
Right. Well, this is what I couldn't get about the Flash either. Is it the Flash or just Flash? I never know.
I think it's the Flash, but I don't know.
The Flash, the definite article. He. What were his powers? Because he was running really fast and then like running into walls and then just getting up and being like, "I'm all right."
I think he's just meant to be really fast, but they kind of have cartoon physics.
Yeah, you got to play with it. Because also, like, he's supposed to wear this suit that protects him. I've no idea where he got that suit from, by the way. I guess that's not explained. But he's supposed to have this suit that, you know, protects him from the friction and the heat and pressure that would come from moving that quickly.
Yeah.
But he hasn't got a face mask on, and he grabs people and moves them, and they're perfectly fine. So,
yeah,
like, I don't know if your eardrums would burst at least or something. You know what I mean? I think he's travelling faster than sound, isn't he? But he never creates a sonic boom.
And we're forgetting Captain Buzzkill, the fucking cyborg. Jesus.
Look, he's not a laugh a minute, all right, but he's important.
You know, I like Cyborg in this film.
Oh no!
I think he's interesting. I like that kind of Frankenstein's monster, moody twat, just killing everyone's good time. I like that.
I was going to ask about Cyborg in terms of in the comics or whatever, wherever the source material is. I was wondered if in the comics he's a black guy, because this character is very much, in the way that Hollywood does, not written as a black guy. It's just written as a normal person, because he never at any point goes "damn" or anything like that. Also, he's like
he says booyah.
Yeah. Well, exactly. That was the one bit that made me think, ugh. But also, he's like a college-educated, intelligent person, which is just not how Hollywood sees black people. So I was just curious if it's obviously not written as a black character in inverted commas in the way that films do that.
I mean, I think he is traditionally, like, the standard version of that character, I think, is a black man. But I don't know if he was originally. I don't really know all that much about Cyborg. I'm just looking it up. Oh, he's first appeared in 1980. He's probably always been black then. Comics were progressive enough back then.
I'm not saying that the character shouldn't be black. I'm just saying that this is not a black character.
No, I know. I thought the question was he originally white, and they just kind of said we could...
Which is either a good sort of step forward and they've written a character as a normal person, or it was just not written as that and then they just cast a black actor.
I think looking at it, I think he has always been the black guy, the character.
Maybe he was actually written by a black person instead of a white person trying
ridiculous. To... A black writer in Hollywood.
Yeah, it'll be Stan Lee.
Stanley out of The Office.
Oh, God.
Oh, shit, is Stan Lee dead?
What? Not unless he died in the last 20 minutes. And
I think he's died today.
What? Oh, shit me, what?
I think he's died today.
Fuck. Yeah, like an hour ago, this says.
Oh, shit.
This is the first time we've had live news on the podcast. When this comes out in about 3 weeks, this will be big news.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't believe he's been dead for insert number of weeks.
This is now the Stanley Memorial episode.
3 weeks, 2 weeks, 1 week.
This is all right. We can make poor taste jokes because in 3 weeks' time, everyone will have had time to get over it, so it's fine.
Stan Lee, he's 95 years old and he has died today. And he had nothing to do with the film we're talking about. So
No, but it's still the Stan Lee Memorial episode.
This is the Stan Lee Memorial episode.
He did have some. He had a lot. He basically is, he basically found, like, for all intents and purposes, he's the man behind Marvel. Obviously, there's a lot to be said for the other people who were doing stuff as well, but it's it's his baby, and that blossomed into the film studio that changed the cinema landscape. That to the point that DC were desperately trying to catch up and made this film. So he is directly responsible for this film. Or indirectly, I suppose, would be more accurate, but yeah.
Oh, yeah, but 95, good innings. Yeah. Star of Mallrats.
Yeah. Oh, God, does that mean... Oh, no, I was going to say, does that mean that awful appearance in Venom is his last cameo? But I'm sure he's already shot his appearance in Avengers Infinity War 2.
Well, didn't he do like a load in a row?
Probably.
So they had them like backed
They just
up.
put him on a green screen and had him say some lines.
Oh, God.
This will be like Tupac. We'll have more material after he's died.
Yeah.
We nearly had this a while ago when we recorded like the day after George Romero died, but it's not quite the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, and there were a couple of times when we recorded and then the person died, like, after we'd been slagging him off.
Roger Moore.
I think I edited it out initially, but didn't I spend loads of our, very early Star Trek episode slagging off Anton Yelchin, and then he died before the episode came out, so I panicked and edited it out.
Yeah, you really disliked him for some reason.
I don't like Anton Yelchin.
You wished him dead, I think. I think you said, I hope he dies in a terrible accident before this comes out.
Anyway, Stan Lee's dead.
Stan Lee, dead.
So...
So, where were we? We've are there any other characters we haven't really talked about? Oh, Aquaman. Okay,
yeah. Well, that's the one that we're doing this episode's tie-in with, because he's got his own film coming out, as well as fancying Wonder Woman. I also fancy Amber Heard, so she's part of the...
I thought you were going to say Aquaman then. It was really...
Yeah, I did.
We've finally broken through in this 2-year-long therapy session we've done going.
Well, I was just going to say, the amount of people I know who are, like, really intensely into Jason Momoa, like, really fucking weirdly into him.
Really?
I think, he's ladies' choice, Jason Momoa, they love him.
He's got a nice body on him.
Ladies' choice.
The thing is,
he's a certain type of woman he appeals to, the kind who go for that
if you
sort
like
of
the bit of rough,
beardy man. But
wonky eye.
My prediction is, him and Amber Heard, those cinema screens are going to be a real hotbed of hormonal energy.
Who's Amber Heard? I've no idea who you're talking about.
She's Johnny Depp's
ex, yeah.
Well, who is she in this film that I just watched?
Aquaman's Aquawoman that he talks
the other
to
the other woman who he talks to underwater, right?
Yeah.
You'll have definitely seen her in Drive Angry.
Yeah, we went to see that, didn't we, Alan?
No, you didn't.
I haven't seen Drive Angry.
Did you not go to see Drive Angry with me and Calvin?
I don't even know what that is.
Are you sure? Nicolas Cage driving a car and William Fichtner or whatever he's called standing on the roof, like adjusting his tie.
I didn't think anyone went to see it.
Calvin and I definitely went. I feel like you were there. You might not have been. Because for me, it was Nicolas Cage being silly Nicolas Cage. For Calvin, it was like cheesy throwback to, shit film on purpose kind of thing. Calvin likes that. So, well, she was in that. She had a very brief appearance in Zombieland as the attractive neighbour that dies very quickly and becomes a zombie.
So, Aquaman... We don't really get much of a backstory here, which I guess they're going to do in this new film. It's just it's just all presented to us as a man who wears low-cut jeans in the sea.
They establish what he is quite well, in that I kind of, assuming they roll with what they've got here, I kind of know what to expect from him in his film.
Slightly sassy.
He's the fun one. He's party boy Aquaman, but I don't know quite how much.
I'm drinking whiskey. Throw the bottle in the ocean. I don't care if it's my home. I'll litter wherever.
But I don't know quite how much they're gonna stick with that or make him less fun. I mean, I think Aquaman has always been kind of a bit of a, bit of a jock, bit of a braggart.
The character journey seems to be this he has to suddenly take things seriously to protect his home and all that sort of thing, you know.
And I think they're going to do that exact same thing.
Like Thor does that, doesn't he?
He's basically Thor underwater. I mean, that's a very similar character. Always has been.
He was super two-dimensional in this film.
Yeah, he is completely. And I'm not entirely sure how good a job they're going to do of adding another dimension in his solo film. I mean, they definitely can do, but I don't know. And, you know, I liked all of the Ace Rimmer stuff where he was, like, riding on dead bodies down through the sky, through buildings, and then just stepping off them. And I thought, you know, if his film's got that level of just insane action fun about it, I'll be very happy. I don't think it will. I think it's going to be, like, completely different tonally in terms of how they put the action together.
Well, this is one of the things with the DC universe, is that they let Zack Snyder kind of almost pick his tone, or like, oh, I'm going to look at this colour palette, more greys and dark blues, and then they've almost, everything has been seeped into this dirge of muddy images.
Yeah, and it's so weird. If you've seen what Wonder Woman's outfit looks like before the colour grading, it's really bright and colourful. And then they kind of sap all they make it grey and dark and dingy, and it's like, oh, that's a shame. That was a nice, colourful image. You know who else is in this film that we haven't mentioned? One of my favourites.
J.K. Simmons.
Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah.
Completely wasted.
Is this connection to a Spider-Man? Is Spider-Man going to turn up? He's the editor of the police force.
Stop it.
Did you see the images of him, like, in the gym?
Yeah.
Getting prepared for this film? And he got absolutely ripped. Ripped to the sausage.
Yeah, it's...
And then, for nothing.
Yeah. I mean, wears a suit the whole time, so...
Yeah, it's bizarre. I don't know what they were, like, if there was something in this, or something they filmed where he, like, got to do some action that just got cut. I don't know quite what... I don't know.
Maybe he thought he was playing Aquaman.
I mean, hopefully, you know, they're still making a solo Batman film in this continuity, even though Ben Affleck seems to be out. I mean, hopefully they'll keep J.K. Simmons instead of just going for a full-on cast reset.
Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah.
What are they going to do with that? How many times are they going to shuffle the deck?
It's weird.
Will it have another Alfred?
Yeah, but what are you going to do? Yeah, because you want a younger Batman now anyway. You've done the...
You can do old, grizzled Batman. It can be done very well. This barely does any of it. They barely lean into the fact that he's a bit too old at all. It's bizarre. When they announced Ben Affleck was being cast as Batman, the whole point was he was going to be an older, grizzled Batman who'd seen some shit and was kind of coming out, you know, towards the end of his lifespan as Batman. And they don't really do anything with that at all. Maybe they were planning to go there with him just being so angry that he kind of gives up on his morals and values in order to try and fight Superman. But they don't do a very good job of conveying it, if that's what they're going for.
No, they really don't.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a secret that these films aren't very well written, so I guess I shouldn't be banging the drum so hard.
I mean, the obvious thing to do is to have Batman, like, find a young protege and train him up to take over the Batmantle.
Batman Beyond.
And then, like, he becomes the new Alfred, basically. And Alfred dies in some sort of emotional...
Yeah, that's Batman Beyond.
I don't know what that is. You're saying that as if I know.
It was a cartoon. It was excellent. It was part of the DC Universe animated thing they had going in the 90s with Batman the Animated Series. It was a sequel show to that, and it was fantastic. It was really quite adult. It had a fantastic portrayal of Bruce Wayne as a kind of Clint Eastwood-esque grizzled old man who couldn't be Batman anymore, but even though he wanted to, and had to rely on, like, old man detective work, and it was fantastic. It was a really good show.
That sounds good.
And it's a shame that they, you know, haven't gone there with the films yet, honestly. Or maybe it's not. Maybe it's good that they haven't gone there with the films yet, and when they eventually do get round to it, which I'm sure they will at some point, it'll be when they've kind of figured out how to make these films without making them suck.
We've dealt with the characters. Where are we in the plot? we establish all the characters. They all get together, and
they have a big fight in Russia for some reason.
Yeah.
They have a big fight.
Yeah, against Steppenwolf.
All right.
Oh, that's not against each other. Sorry.
You just jump right to the end. Sorry.
Is that not where we were up to?
No, I was still dealing with the characters.
Well, they have a big fight with Steppenwolf before the end, and then they have another big fight with him afterwards.
Oh, yeah. They go and fight him, and they rescue Cyborg's dad and all that. Yeah,
and that's kind of like, we're getting used to being the good guys. Now let's go do it again.
But that was a decent action scene. That was all
right.
That
was
was
pretty
quite
good.
Well
yeah.
Although I was thinking during that scene, I was like, it's funny in these films, no one really has any projectile weapons, and I was thinking, maybe I know there's a lot of like, there's honor in hand-to-hand combat and all like that, but the villains don't have them either. So it's not like, Batman never picks up a gun and all that.
Steppenwolf's from a million years ago, isn't he?
Well, exactly. But I was just thinking, maybe it's just
guns.
more visual. Hand-to-hand combat is more visual. It's a bit more.
Cyborg shoots lasers.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I was thinking all that, and then Batman got into his.
Superman shoots lasers.
Yeah, but Batman then got into his Batmobile thing and started shooting everybody. So that was that.
Zack Snyder is a fucking idiot. It would have been better if he got in his Batmobile and like a giant boxing glove on a spring shot out the top of it and smacked Steppenwolf in the face. And
well, Steppenwolf had that weird axe and then never used it as an axe.
Yeah.
Like, he never chopped anyone, he just poked them with the end. I was like, well, I have an axe. Like, he's not worked out how to chop down a tree yet. He's just poking it with his stick.
He was doing the job.
He was an odd villain.
I mean,
that feels like the sort of villain where you need some backstory. And I know they had a little flashback to show that, but...
Well, Steppenwolf is... My understanding is he's kind of a henchman. He's kind of a lesser secondary villain who works under the character of Darkseid, who is one of the big... He's the DC equivalent of Thanos, essentially. And he's basically Superman's arch nemesis. And my understanding is, when this was originally Justice League Part 1, if you remember, they were going to do, much like Avengers have, a sort of two-part thing. Zack Snyder envisioned this being, it's the henchman who's come to Earth as like a scout party, and the end credits thing is going to be, Darkseid scooping him up and coming down, and it's like, now they've got to fight the real villain, and that was going to be the second film. At some point in production, they were like, nah, we can't, we've really just got to try and focus on making this one work as much as we can, instead of making it a setup for another film that we don't want to get locked into making immediately.
But they still threw a setup at the end with Lex Luthor and that Deathstroke.
Yeah, but that's a brand new, almost certainly Joss Whedon edition setup, and I think it's a very it's a good setup for a future Justice League that's complete, because the problem is Darkseid, it's like, that's just gonna be the same exact thing again, and Marvel have already given you the sort of everyone going up against one really insanely powerful guy story, and what Marvel haven't done is a team of villains yet. So it's actually quite a good idea, I think, for a future Justice League to kind of...
But the thing about this as well is, and the reason why Marvel did so well with Infinity War is because they built up such a lengthy amount of films where they showed the backstories of the heroes, that they could solely concentrate on the story of the villain.
Yeah.
And now DC are like, we're not going to do that. We're going to concentrate on 10 villains and have a legion. Yep. And you're like, no, you've not even... I don't even know who the Flash is yet, or Aquaman.
You know what, as well? I think Marvel, typically speaking, their post-credit scenes are really good at just kind of getting you excited and so on, because they're kind of opening the door and saying, look, there's this extra bit of story we haven't told yet, but it's a direct fallout of what you've just seen, or it's, revealing something about what you've just seen that you hadn't realised. And here, the post-credit scene is more the further adventures of. It's not really very related to anything that's happened in this film. It's kind of just, that happened, now here's, the beginning of the next bit. It's not quite... It feels more divorced from everything else than...
Absolutely.
Than Marvel stuff does. But, yeah. I mean, this film, mess. Big mess.
Superman does come back, which nobody saw that coming. They brought Superman back. I mean, do you feel like they made an effort to justify that in any way, or it was just like
bringing it back?
Magic cube.
Well, the thing is, again, I think that's one of the big stories. Again, Marvel have been largely mining their big famous story arcs for their films, and things like Civil War are big ongoing parts of their comic history that people know, and DC have got all of these, one of which is the death of Superman. It's a very well-known story arc that they did. So they were obviously... I think Zack Snyder's entire vision for this film, this film series, apparently spanned 5 films and was basically the death of Superman. But when it became apparent that he didn't know how to make a good film,
in the late 90s,
they sort of took it away from him, and so we only got this like weird quarter-baked version of what we were going to get. Yeah, so as a result, it doesn't work at all. But I don't think you're ever really... The way it's presented in Batman v Superman meant to think, oh god, Superman's dead. Wow, that was unexpected. I think you're meant... The way it's done, it's like, oh, he's dead. Well, they're going to have to deal with that in the first 5 minutes of the next film. It's not like the Avengers. It's not like Avengers Infinity War, where they actually seem to expect people to go, oh my god, they're dead. And amazingly, a lot of people are going, oh wow, they're dead. I think it's played a lot more knowingly that everyone's going to just know that they're coming back immediately. I don't know though.
It was quite bold how long they left it before.
Yeah.
Though.
I mean, I did expect it to be in the sequence where they're getting the team together. I kind of thought that would just be one of them in there, and no, they operate as a Justice League for quite a while before Superman's the big. We need an extra member to win. He's when in a sports movie. That's the same thing, isn't it? In the third act, you have to get a really good player to join.
Bring in the ringer.
I enjoyed this film as much of a mess as it is, and it is a complete mess. It feels like a really Frankenstein bit of work assembled from various different ideas and visions and what have you. I think it's quite amazing how well it works, all things considered. And that's not to say it works particularly well, but I think it's solidly entertaining. The characters are fantastical and interesting enough. There's enough good performances and, little fun Joss Whedon-y moments, good action scenes. I think it largely works, like I say.
I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities.
Yeah, I agree.
Which is, I think, just comes from trying to do too much in like this one film. Like even with the Wonder Woman story, like we basically, everyone she's ever known and grew up with is murdered in one big battle, and we never see her finding that out. We only see her in the aftermath, and in the aftermath, the only thing we see her is her. Someone mentioned Steve, and she's like, "Oh, Steve, I had a one night stand with him 100 years ago. I'm not over it." It was like everyone is dead yesterday.
Yeah,
I think if this was a Marvel film, they probably wouldn't go into that either. But then we know we'd be getting Wonder Woman 2 that was going to pick up with that, and we'd see the ramifications of it. And I think that would be quite nice. Whereas here, we know we're getting Wonder Woman 2 set in the 80s, which is going to try and justify a bit of how she's come from that previous film 100 years ago to this one. But then, given that she hasn't really evolved or changed very much as a character since that film, it's going to be very weird to expect, to see that there was this whole extra thing that happened. Because
even if her character journey is drop out of that world and just become an art restorer or whatever, then that is still an interesting journey in the sense of why has she done that? Does she ever use her powers? Does she use them for good? All that sort of stuff,
Yeah.
And plus, as someone who never ages and is, kind of immortal, that means you can't really form long-lasting relationships. You have to move on every 10 years before people start going, you age very well, what's going on? So, that's quite a difficult life to have if you're trying
but
to
that's
hide
such
it.
an interesting concept, and it's probably better explored in the old Highlander film
exactly
than it ever is in here. And it's weird you saying that the story works, but I feel the story only works because there's absolutely no ambition in the story. It's a very paint by numbers bad guy wants to destroy the planet, needs to get some boxers together, and then the heroes have to come together and fight him.
Never sold on the bad guy. It's just not. There's just not enough there, or it's just not developed enough in whatever way. But yeah, never care about that.
Yeah, he's a weak villain. You think as well, the villains Marvel's brought to the table for their big Avengers movies. You've had Loki in the first one. Fantastic villain. Fantastic, fun, campy, hamming it up performance. Brilliant. Then
I think Thanos is one of the best villains
exactly
of all time, I would say.
Yeah.
And I'd actually go as far to say that.
Thanos, who's got such well-defined motivation and personality and is arguably the protagonist of the film he's in. Again, they've done a really fantastic job with him, and he's menacing, and this is just some big muscly guy, and we don't know anything about him or what the MacGuffins he's after do, and we don't care. And as much as the performance of the guy playing him seems like he's doing the best job with the material he's been given, it's just weak material, isn't it? It's just he's not even particularly interesting to look at. He's just like a big guy in a suit of armor. He feels like a generic video game villain.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean. And they're trying to do too much. They've got to establish some characters that you've never seen before. You've got to. The villain gets lost. You've got this whole bringing Superman back to life story that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
And so there's just there's no time to do anything with anything.
In 2 hours.
There's never any real sense of threat, I think, from the villain as well. It's meant to be this huge existential crisis that the characters are facing, but it only ever feels like, this big bully's come, they've got to beat up.
The obvious threat, if the threat is, look, these things are going to come together and then the whole world will die in some way, we have no concept of that. We need some, even if it's just like a physical thing that's like hanging over everyone, that we know it's there. But and so they try and make up for that by having, look at this family, they're trapped there.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, by the way, the world's going to end. Can you just take a couple of minutes to save this family of 4 that nobody cares about? And that just seems like a desperate attempt to try and make it a personal, like, you try and give it some sense of stakes.
That just drives it home that they've done the exact same thing they've been doing ever since they got criticised in Man of Steel for levelling a city by having the villain conveniently set the final battle out in like the most remote area, completely away from any civilians.
Well, that was it. You've gone through a whole film with no one has died or been injured, apart from the bad guy and his not very human henchman. So we don't even have to think of them as living beings.
Yeah.
Would you both like to see like a director's cut of this film?
I was thinking that when I watched this. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people have been calling for release the Zack Snyder cut, and I honestly don't think such a thing exists. But I would be very interested to see if they could be bothered putting the money in and the time to kind of complete his version. I would find it very interesting to see what he was planning to do with it. But I feel like I've got a good sense of what he was going to do with it. So I don't quite know. I don't know. That's not to say I think it would be good. I think it would just be a kind of oddity of like,
Because I actually thought the extended Batman vs. v Superman, was better than the original, despite being still quite poor.
I haven't seen it. But I know I ought. Well, no, actually, I don't know. I was going to say I know I ought to, but should I?
I don't know.
Probably not worth it.
Nah.
It is better.
It's the only one you've seen, isn't it, Alan? The extended.
I accidentally watched the extended one, wasn't I? I was
nearly
killed myself afterwards. It was so long.
And that's the better one. Just imagine the original.
When it comes to Zack Snyder, shorter is better.
I do think the DC universe is in a really weird place now, though, because they seem to be pulling their shit together. James Gunn's been hired to make Suicide Squad 2, and that pretty much guarantees that that's going to be a solid bit of fun, if nothing else. 7 out of 10.
Hope so.
I can't. Yeah, I think he seems dependable enough at this point. I think James Gunn, though I guess he's been working with Marvel and their people up until now, and working with less dependable producers might not yield as good results. He is, after all, the man who wrote Scooby-Doo. And Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, actually.
Oh, really?
Oh, did he?
Yeah. I think Robert Zemeckis isn't doing the Flash. I think Robert Zemeckis isn't doing the Flash anymore, is he? Have they got a director for the Flash at this point, or is that film just kind of
I don't know.
languishing at the moment?
Oh, I don't know.
It's apparently John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein are directing the Flash movie at this point.
No, not those guys. Who are they?
I think they're predominantly writers. Yeah, they directed. Did you see Game Night earlier this year, Alan?
Oh yeah.
No, I didn't see it actually. I saw the trailer and all that. Yeah.
Solid comedy, not particularly well directed, not badly directed, just pedestrian direction. They directed that, and they directed that Vacation reboot, the Chevy Chase thing where they tried to kickstart it with Ed Helms.
Oh, with Ed Helms, yeah, that's not so great.
I've not seen
So
it.
the comedy guys then.
Yeah, and they've written. They wrote Spider-Man: Homecoming. Apparently, they've got screenplay credits on that, as well as Horrible Bosses 2. They're credited with the story for Horrible Bosses 2. Oh, they wrote Horrible Bosses, the first one.
So it seems like
comedy
they're going
guys
in a comedy direction there. That makes sense.
Yeah. Well, at some point it was going to be what are they called? The Lego Movie guys, the 21 Jump Street guys, Phil Lord and Chris Miller.
Yeah.
They were in the conversation for a while. I think these are like bargain bin Phil Lord, Chris Millers from the look of it. So
yeah, let's just do the ratings to the film before we forget.
all right, 7.
7.
Very generous.
Sorry, I just turned into Calvin.
I'm standing by my 7 from the review of the year. That is like the lowest possible 7, but it's a 7.
Percent.
With 7%. When I reviewed it last time, I gave it a 6. I have knocked it down to a 5, just because I was very bored by the end of it. And I just think, forget it. So 5.
I thought I was being generous with a 4. I aggressively hated this film. It was like torture. I enjoyed how much I hated it, but it was awful.
Oh, I quite enjoy it. I think it's like I say, it's a mess, but I think the action scenes largely work. I find the characters mostly interesting. I like a lot of the little lines, and I know I'm in the minority there, but like I said last time, I would only put this like one notch below Wonder Woman. I think it's about as good as that. But then I didn't think Wonder Woman was that amazing.
Steppenwolf, Sol. Steppenwolf.
Yeah, I mean, he's more of a plot device than a villain, but you know, they had some good hits in the early 70s, didn't they? I like Magic Carpet Ride.
Yeah. Oh, is that Steppenwolf?
Yeah.
Yeah, I quite liked the scene you were talking about with the baton basically passing on the box. That was quite a good bit. I liked the bit where he was saying to the Flash, just save one. I thought that was quite a good little moment. And then that's about it.
The one bit of like good leadership we see from Batman, actually. The one bit of like being a mentor. What about how blatantly Batman has makeup on round his eyes under the mask that he must put on?
Yes. Just paint them black.
Very theatrical, isn't it? Just, I don't know. Don't know if it quite gels with the character as he's presented, but
7.
yeah. I'm standing by it.
Oh,
anyway.
I'm gonna go back and listen to ones, and anything that you've given under 7, I'm just gonna be appalled.
Oh god, we recorded one last night where like I think it's going to upset a lot of people that one of the films I gave a 6.
Well, Aquaman is coming out, and judging from the scenes that we see of Aquaman in this film, where it's just the Aquaman scenes, there's like one scene basically of him underwater. There's a fight scene which is very undynamic because it's all underwater and a bit odd. And then they have to create an air bubble so they can have a conversation, which seems impractical.
I don't think any of that's I think they basically said, the Aquaman film's not going to portray water in the same way as Justice League, which is a bit
interesting
of a problem for continuity's sake, but I think they're just going to kind of be talking and acting normally underwater, and in Aquaman, from what I can gather.
Looking at Superman's mustache, I don't think they care about continuity with that top lip.
Yeah, so I could see it working. I can believe the buzz that's coming out at the minute, that it's kind of all right. I reckon it's probably going to be not as good as Wonder Woman, but probably the second best DC film.
So a 7.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, solid 7. What would you do to follow up this film, Justice League? What would you do as Justice League 2, let's say, rather than a spin-off?
Well, I just kept thinking about the Cube.
Hang on, is Willem Dafoe in Aquaman?
Yeah, he is.
Huh.
He was supposed to be in this, and then
was he?
Cut him out.
He
was in the trailer.
Playing Neptune. Is he actually playing Neptune?
Who else is he going to be?
Yeah. Oh well, fair enough.
Dafoe in.
But sorry, you were just about to do your.
Well, I was just kept thinking of Philip Schofield on the Cube, and
wait a minute, you're referring to TV things, aren't you? We don't watch daytime TV. Sol has a job and I don't have a telly, so
I don't have a TV either. Don't tarnish me with that. Yeah.
Wait, having a job was supposed to be the more honourable answer to that. Wait, the Cube. No, wait, I know what the Cube is. They put someone in a cube and they have to dance for money or something, isn't it?
Yeah, something.
It's
like
really
that. It's all different challenges. They have to do different challenges and then they win some money.
But it's in a cube. That's the selling point. They have to do their challenge in a cube.
But I couldn't get past this idea, and then I thought of all different things. So this could be a magical cube, and it could magically put mustaches onto superheroes that don't have them. But then, more on a serious note, I thought it'd be more interesting to follow either Superman or Wonder Woman and follow them even further down the line, as like you were saying before about everyone's died and what's happened to this person, and actually over time have they lost some of their powers and they can't control some of the things that happen. I guess that's probably
kind of like a Logan.
Logan, yeah.
Okay, Sol, you're going to be the best equipped to answer this. So obviously at the end of this film, Justice League, we have a setup that, hey, look, we're going to have more people here in the Justice League. So who are the characters that they haven't introduced yet that we can look forward to seeing?
Martian Manhunter.
What? Is that a thing?
I'm glad that got a laugh because it deserves it. Yeah, he's one of the big. He's probably the Justice League member who only just missed out on making the cut for the first film. I think he is just like a Martian. I think that's basically all it is.
Does he hunt men? Is he a manhunter in the sense of Jar Jar Gabor?
He's kind of.
Does he actually hunt men like a predator?
No, I think he's just kind of very spiritual.
I'm a Martian manhunter.
I think he's quite like an American, like a stereotypical Native American kind of vibe about him. I don't know. I think he is just an alien. I think his powers are to do with phasing between realities and that sort of shit. But it's been a while since I've seen anything with him in. Green Lantern's the obvious one. I forgot.
Yeah, there were lanterns in that.
There was
scene,
a reference to that in the
Is there? Are there?
Thing. Well, there's someone with a green ring and that sort of thing.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, it was in the battle sequence that was very Lord of the Rings. I
mean, they're making, or they were making, a Green Lanterns film to be part of this world. I don't know if that's still moving ahead or what, but there's definitely potential to do Green Lantern properly.
But they've done Green Lantern already, right?
Yeah, it didn't go down very well with Ryan Reynolds. Yeah,
that's right.
So yeah, they're kind of the two big ones that you can expect to be set up in future stuff, I think.
Okay, so what are the little shitty ones that are going to be funnier, like Sally Squirrel or whatever that
Hawk Girl?
Hawk Girl?
Yeah.
Does she have to have a little mask over her eyes?
Yep.
So she doesn't fly away.
She's kind of like Thor.
She's kind of like Kez.
What I've seen of her, they make up for her by giving her quite an interesting character, but her actual super abilities and powers are just lame. I don't think anyone really cares about her.
Good point, though. We do need another woman.
Super Girl as well is another one that they could certainly add in. She's often a member of Justice League, I think.
Catwoman they could bring back again. Get Halle Berry out.
Yeah. There's someone. There's like he's in that. He's on TV at the minute, isn't he? The Green Robin Hood man, Archer, Arrow.
I think so.
He's one of them.
Oh, the show's called Arrow, anyway.
Yeah, and he's just kind of Hawkeye from what I remember.
We need another one of that.
Yeah. Who else is there? There's I think there's a character who's just. Oh God! What? Oh Christ! What is it? There's a really fucking bizarre character who's like got power over gold or something. Give me a second. I'm gonna have to look this up.
Scrooge McDuck.
There was one voiced by Herbert West as well. There was one voiced by Jeffrey Combs, who was really weird.
I was going to say Herbert West is a character in the anime.
Batgirl's something that could happen though at some point.
Is there like a bat dog?
There's Crypto the Super Dog.
There is a Super Dog, yeah, that's right.
I think there is a bat dog who goes up against Crypto the Super Dog in various comics, but I don't think he's typically part of the...
Oh, that's what we want. An old dog remake of one of these things.
You know what? I would be so on board with that. Yeah, I would be so on board with that.
Did we do this quite recently in an episode?
James Bond.
An old dog?
Yeah,
something.
Okay,
we can't really retread that same path, then, can we?
All Cat Justice League.
Dogs again.
Granny Goodness. That's a villain. I forgot about Granny Goodness.
What's Granny
Is that a real thing?
Yeah.
What's that then? What's her special power?
Granny Goodness. I think she's a Superman villain. She's often voiced by a man. She's often one of these kind of...
I gotta call my mother.
I think she's like an evil old woman who's got like... I think she might be a... oh God, what's Superman?
Kryptonian.
She's like an alien species that's really powerful. She looks like Phyllis Diller.
Sounds great.
Oh my God, I forgot Gorilla Grodd! Gorilla Grodd! He's a big gorilla! Oh, I forgot Gorilla Grodd. I mean, again, he's more of a villain, I think. But he's like one of the Flash's enemies.
Do you know, I won't be surprised. Yeah, now they've done the Planet of the Apes films, I won't be surprised.
Andy Serkis.
Yeah, because with the success of Guardians of the Galaxy, you kind of need a really kooky band of heroes.
Like a raccoon.
Yeah, there you go.
Like kookier than the ones we've got here. Hermes. I forgot about Hermes. Hermes
is he...
Come on, what are you going to... Man-witch joke? What are we going to get? Come on.
Someone who brings a parcel.
No, I was going to go with the Futurama guy. It was just a bit...
Hermes is part of the Justice League a lot of the time, and it is just what they did with Thor in Marvel, where they just took a Norse god.
He just passes messages along. It doesn't really do anything.
He's just a Greek god. But, well, not demigod. What is Hermes? He's not a god, is he? He's
a messenger to the gods. I don't know if that means he's a god or not.
Jonah Hex. He's one of the big ones.
Oh, they've done that, haven't they?
But he's normally alive in the olden days, so I don't think he typically crosses over with... Yeah, they did a Jonah Hex film with Josh Brolin. He's done a lot of superhero films, hasn't he?
Yeah, he's good for it, isn't he? Yeah. And Megan Fox was in it as well.
Remember her? Any quirky ideas? What can we throw in it as a... What's the threat to the Justice League?
Jeffrey Combs plays Question. Here we are. I knew he played someone interesting. He's called Question.
Yeah,
he looks very similar to the Riddler. He's like a guy in a green trench coat with a green like trilby hat. God, what's his power? He's got like a really weird power. He's a
superhuman thirst for knowledge.
Does he have no powers? Is that what it is? So he's an investigative journalist. He has a special mask that like covers his face, so he's basically like completely anonymous. He just looks like a blank, like mannequin kind of guy. Seems like he probably doesn't have much in the way of a power reading this. So. Oh no, here we are. Powers and abilities. All right. Acrobatics, that's not a real power. Disguise, that's not a real power. Genius level intellect, hand-to-hand combat.
That's standard practice.
Will, interrogation, intimidation, investigation,
journalism.
Dragon style kung fu.
Right.
He was trained by... Do you want to guess the name of who trained him in Dragon style kung fu?
Bruce Lee?
No.
Dragon Master?
You nearly got it. He was trained by Richard Dragon.
Oh. Obviously.
Dick Dragon.
Popular popular DC character, Dick Dragon. So yeah, he doesn't have any powers. These are all pretend powers. Philosophy, shamanism. Oh my god, guess what his weakness is? Guess what his weakness is as listed on the DC wiki. This is incredible.
Eczema.
I mean, again, you're not far off.
I don't know.
His weakness, Alan, is lung cancer.
What?
It just says, due to his smoking habit, Vic Sage developed terminal lung cancer, of which she eventually died.
That is a weakness.
Yes.
Wow. I mean, this is pretty fantastic. I'm going to see what Batman's weaknesses are listed as. It's going to be like death of parents.
It'll be like tennis elbow.
Batman's got one weakness listed, right? Single-mindedness.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Not a team player.
Yeah. So yeah, throw some ideas. Come on.
Superman dies and they have to resurrect him with a sphere. Or a rectangle.
I think you need a better villain. I'd much prefer like a more down-to-earth villain.
Let's look at what we've got to work with. Let's assume this is part of this universe. What pieces have we got to play with? So we've still got
Lex Luthor.
Yeah, we've got Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor knocking around, so we can do something with that.
Two Jokers.
Yeah. Harley Quinn. The Joker will automatically make anything better. So,
but the Joker going up against Superman is a bit of a no contest, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is a Jared Leto Joker as well, which might do more damage than good at this point.
Yeah.
So maybe we should steer clear of the Joker.
Anyone going up against Superman is a no contest, though. That's the problem with him.
They could have Justice League v Suicide Squad: Dawn of the 2-star film.
But this gives us J.K. Simmons as Gordon. That'd be nice to bring back again. I guess Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor could be used well.
I'm very in favour of getting J.K. Simmons very involved.
Yeah, I think
like him being a member of.
Yeah, let's do it.
Like he does.
Gordon must have been in the Justice League at some point in some incarnation. I'm looking this up.
Yeah.
Like they put him in a robot suit or something.
Yeah,
so he's got strength. There's a good story world here without the super people. You know, you got Lois Lane, you got Commissioner Gordon.
Yeah. Yeah. Can we do a film about Lois Lane kind of like dealing with the fact that alien life is being discovered?
Oh yeah.
And like maybe there's like a big cocoon-shaped spaceship in the middle of Central Park that she's got to go to and learn to communicate with the Mothman or something. something like that. Hawkeye could show up.
Yeah, they suddenly turn out to be exceptional linguists. You could do a film. You could genuinely do a film where Commissioner Gordon has to deal with like these non-super villains who think they're really good.
Well, the Condiment
or the
King.
Justice. Yeah, exactly. Because the Justice League are busy like somewhere else dealing with a real like major threat. But in the meantime, the world goes on, and then this bloody Condiment King is holding up hot dog vendors all over Gotham City.
It could happen at the exact same time that Justice League film was going on.
As soon as the Justice League are busy, all the criminals come out and go, "Oh, there's no one stopping us. Let's get on with it." The police have got lazy.
The idea of J.K. Simmons getting really annoyed because he's got to deal with fucking Clock King, Condiment King, and Calendar Man have all teamed up to like cause havoc.
Well, this is how you can get away with using those shitty villains because the superheroes aren't around. And it's just like Commissioner Gordon has to deal with them. You get Lois Lane for a cameo. She helps him out with some investigative stuff.
I think Jake. Let's assemble a team of characters for our film. And I don't know what we'll call it something team or something league at the end, but that can come later.
It's called Justice Second Division.
It needs to be Commissioner Gordon, as played by J.K. Simmons, maybe in a robot suit, maybe not, but Lois Lane's in it. In fact, can it be all the sidekick characters?
Martha Kent.
Let's get Alfred in there. I know that's two Batman ones, but like Alfred. So we've got Jeremy Irons, J.K. Simmons,
Cyborg's dad.
Yeah,
he's quite handy.
He's all right. Yeah. Amber Heard. Get her in there.
No, because she's got superpowers.
Steve turns up. Yeah. Steve turns up in a 1918 plane, and it turns out that he hadn't died at all. He just got sucked into a time hole.
Did David Thewlis get killed? He did, didn't he? We couldn't bring him back as like a good guy. He's a god, isn't he? He could come back and be like, "I'll join your team. I'll join." No, I can't do his voice. Can't do it. There's Eddie Redmayne then instead.
We don't
that's not even Eddie Redmayne, is it? It's Ed Miliband.
Same thing.
Yeah. Right. That's yeah. All right. Cool. That'll do.
Chris, do you want to plug your podcast again? We'll stick it on in the end.
No.
The man has no faith in it.
Listen to it, everyone. You'll be disappointed.
Okay, it's called Spoilt Milk.
Yeah, Spoilt Milk. Spoiltmilk.co.uk if you want to find all the links to it. And thanks for this, guys. It's been so fun.
It's all right. Thanks for coming and doing it. It's been a pleasure.
It's been very good.
Yeah, thank you very
Although
much.
if once this episode goes out, I bet Stanley will be turning in his grave. Because of our ideas. Hey?
I think this episode's what killed him.
Yes.